off the top is to please look at each of these topics as we go through them as a staging ground for discussion. So as we start talking about whether it's live video streaming or text messaging for alerts on websites or on iPads and iPhones, of course, just let's look at that as an opportunity to share what you've experienced, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and where you're going. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. There we go. I guess it would be too formal to call these ground rules or anything, but rather just kind of to further define and orient around this. Everything we're going to be going over today, whether it's me saying it or you, is probably going to be outdated by the end of the weekend to some extent. So it's this constant pace of evolution, and it's actually a really good news story. It's great for us because, you know, a while ago, let's look back 2 years or 5 or 10 years, publishing to the web, in particular live postings to the web, was very difficult. Each year it gets easier and easier. Each quarter it gets much easier, as we've all enjoyed that. I doubt that very many people in this room has ever jiggled acoustic couplers onto a payphone trying to get your Tandy computer to post to the newsroom, but that's just an illustration of how far we've come. 300 baud acoustic coupler. How many of you guys are using those? Probably nobody. But the point being that the technical barriers continue to come down so that people like us are no longer inhibited by what I think of as a technical barrier that is put up, in fact, many times by technologists, but oftentimes because the capabilities just have not been put into our hands. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about how each of these different options of posting live from the field using smartphones, iPads included. I'm going to take the liberty of broadening the definition of what smartphones for smart journalists really means to talk about some different options. A little bit, my bio's in the stack of papers that you got when you walked in. I won't bother to go very long other than to say I started in the newsroom a long time ago, ended up in Seattle where working for Paul Allen's company Starwave, we deployed a number of really innovative early websites in the 90s. ABC News, ESPN, NFL.com, Outside Magazine. And it was there that I realized that, in fact, at that point in time, the technology governed all. Now it's our creativity. And that's a fundamental shift, and I think we should all really be pleased that that has come to pass. Any comments about acoustic couplers or anything else like that before we go on? Probably the most fundamental approach to what we can do with remote reporting, obvious as can be audio and text postings, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Working with community collaboration and live event coverage using smartphones in the field, and also folks back in the newsroom to bring things to life on the website and on our mobile applications. And then mobile streaming video. These feel like three really important areas of focus in increasing sophistication and power in communicating our stories to readers and engaging readers back into the stories. Anybody want to throw anything else in there? Please feel free to as we go. This is really, really primitive, but at Lee, we're 56 daily newspapers scattered across the northern states and communities like Billings, Montana, Casper, Wyoming, Provo, Utah. These are markets where we don't have high adoption rate necessarily. We watch every mobile device that comes to our site and see each month what is the dominant device. It's interesting to note that within 3 days of the iPad's release, it was typically number 3 or 4 mobile device accessing our content. So that's pretty stunning adoption rate. It could have been that everybody who got their device was messing around with it so much that it skewed the stats a little bit, but it's held up through the week. So clearly things are getting more sophisticated. That said, over the last couple of years, we haven't had a lot of the resources necessary to take live reporting from the field into the newsroom, to the newspaper, to the web page. One option that we used was Jot Networks, which is a very simple tool. It's an application on your device. You hit it, you tell it call City Desk, and begin speaking. It then captures all the text and sends it as an email to the designated recipients in that user group, and includes an attachment of the audio file. Very simple, very primitive, but it worked. And you know, our motto is what works now today. So this is the kind of stuff that you don't need it doesn't cost anything other than the device for the basic model, but it can give you real-time reporting from the field in ways that are very simple. And I'm sure this is very primitive compared to what all you guys have been doing this week so far. Have you guys looked at other ways of using very simple text and audio capture and delivery methods in any of the work that you've been doing, or are you well past that? No? Of course, now with Twitter and other capabilities, it's becoming much easier to do that. But this is what's powerful about this was the ability to capture the audio so you can hear the reporter's voice or even the source's voice as they're describing a situation. So we're going to start at the most primitive phase of the evolution of use of smartphones in the field for reporting and move up into how on our sites we found ways to use other technologies to really engage the community. And this is, as we've all seen 100 times, the more we can engage people in a dialogue or building the news together, it builds the snowball effect. And we've seen some profound levels of user engagement. And on the way over here, I was thinking about the first time that I experienced the power of community engagement was in, I think it was 1997. I was working for Outside Online at that time, and I had sent a correspondent to Everest Base Camp to cover the Scott Fisher expedition, a guy I had come to know in Seattle. And so Jane was there for a while, and everything was going great. Well, as you may know from the book Into Thin Air by John Krakauer, the expedition rapidly deteriorated due to a horrific storm, and probably the most difficult thing was to be able to connect all these sources of information in the field at that time in a meaningful collection point of information. So we set out, and at that point, the message board functionality wasn't what we wanted. Had a couple engineers come in, and the next day we had a message board system that was put up that was a little more elegant than the rec.news types of community groups. It allowed people to post messages. They'd have their photos and associated information. What was powerful about that, though, was that the community formed quickly. And it was most of the participants at the first few hours were family members and friends of the climbers. And then it quickly spiraled into a bunch of hardcore mountaineering folks who were wanting the latest information on what was going on. I think the important thing of that was that group still exists today. That community has continued to evolve. At some point along the way, the servers were shut down, and that group migrated to another community installation. What that means for a local news publication is, as you can begin building these communities, of course, we've seen it over and over again, you build a sustained audience that continues to provide sustained engagement, and maybe more important than that to us as journalists, inputs from the real world, insight from what's happening. And on the right, this is a very simple use of Cover It Live in Sioux City in February. It was a big storm. They started twittering into the Cover It Live, posting photos and videos. You can submit live video feeds into the Cover It Live platform. It's either free or there's an ad share model. We're looking at doing a corporate-wide deal to get this available to everybody without the ads that they run on their interface. So it's easy to deploy, it's easy to moderate, but most of all, it's fast. I think the capability also of doing on-demand playback is interesting for people who want to follow a breaking news story as it evolves over time, and that